Okay, so I like to kick off all of the healthy exchanges, which is the same question for all my guests, which is, what does health and well-being mean to you?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot, especially as I'm kind of approaching a really big birthday that's traditionally associated with midlife. And I think in the past, the way I've thought about health and well-being is, the habits that I need to have to, honestly, I think a little bit in my head, I thought if I did them, I would live forever. And now I realize that's not the case. And so my mindset is kind of shifting to how can I best take care of myself so that I can most fully enjoy everything that this human experience has to offer for as long as possible.
I like that. So you mentioned that you have a background in the humanities, or that's what you studied, and then you found yourself in corporate finance. How did you find yourself moving from corporate finance to personal finance, and what was that for you? Why was that important for you?
Yeah. So um, I went into corporate finance. I'm good at math. I like to organize things. I think it's really cool. And I'm probably the only person who will ever say this, but I love how finance is an imperfect system that's trying to describe what's going on in the world. And you can use the numbers to kind of tease out patterns. I thought that was so fun and I loved doing it. The challenge was I was doing it in this gigantic corporate setting for a lovely company that is a wonderful corporate citizen, but I just didn't feel really bought in on our mission. And one day my brother, who works in financial services, says to me, Betsy, you're just the right amount of anal to be a great financial planner. And I said, you're the only person who can say that to me. But that kind of started just talking to different financial planners. And what I love, 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 love about my job is that, yes, I know all the things about taxes. I know all the things about retirement. I know all the number stuff and all the rules, but I'm not doing my job if we're not talking about the human part. Like that's where we start, that's where we end, that's where we check in frequently. So that's just a wonderful marriage of humanity and people and helping them, and then also just being super technical too.
Yeah, I can see that excitement of like sort of the, dare I say, nerdy side that gets really
It's
into
really
the
nerdy.
nits and lights of the math and the finance stuff, and then the warmth, which is one of the first things I noticed about you when we met, is like well, and I'll let you respond to this, because when you said, when I first met you, and then you said, I'm a financial planner, I was like, what?
Oh yeah.
You just didn't strike me as,
Yeah.
I don't know, I have a perception, I guess, but then you said that wealth management is money with heart. And I thought, oh, tell me more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really think about the way I like to think about my job is how do I help people organize their resources so they can live the lives that they want to live, and whatever that means. And you have to understand what those lives are, and you have to understand that person and their family situation and their goals and their family before you can really figure out how to put that plan together for them.
Yeah. And obviously you're not a psychologist, but you do
No.
have a front row seat,
Mhm.
in an area that can be really emotionally fraught, right? And I I wondered if one of the things that you and I talked about was, one of the things that can be emotionally fraught is our tendency to identify with our money, whether we feel like we have it or not.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could say a little bit of that about that.
Yeah. So I think the place where I start is money is an imperfect system that we use to exchange value. That's it. It's not good. It's not bad. Actually, there's this author who I really like. Her name is Sarah Newcomb, and she summed it up really well. She said, money itself is a neutral resource full of possibilities. It can be used for good or for ill, and how a person uses it is entirely a matter of personal choice. So that is true. Money is not good or bad. But what is also true is that we ascribe a lot of stories around it. We have a lot of feelings around it. And so I think it's important for all of us, and this is something that I work on a lot with even myself and with my clients, like taking it is true that money is neutral, but also that you have your own relationship. How can you bring some awareness to what that relationship is that you're having with money, those stories that you're telling yourself around money, the stories that you're telling yourself about yourself around money? How can you bring that awareness and just ask yourself, how well is this serving me right now?
Yeah. So what are some of one of the things you talked about was writing a personal financial narrative. What does
Yeah,
that mean?
that's so it's really fun. And actually, so I would point to so there's this woman at Morningstar who is a behavioral economist named Sarah Newcomb, and she wrote this book called Loaded. And that's the one I just quoted from. I love it. And this book is all about how do you tease out what your relationship is with money. So in her personal financial narrative, she has prompts to help you to help you kind of discover what your narrative is. And let me find it real quick. She asks questions like, who have been the 2 or 3 most influential people in your life financially? And how did each of them view money? If money were a character in your life story, up to this point, would you say it has been a friend or an enemy? What emotions do you most strongly associate with money? And it's funny because, I come to this and I've thought about money a lot for a long time. And I went through and answered all those questions. And I got to this point that I never thought that I wouldn't have known that I would have landed there when I started at the beginning. And it was super insightful and also surprising. So I highly recommend kind of spending that time to reflect on what is it that I've pinned on money in my life, and what is that doing for me
And to me.
and to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like did you read the subhead of that book or the subtitle of the book? So it's loaded,
Yeah.
but then
It's loaded: money, psychology, and how to get ahead without leaving your values behind.
so it's very values. Okay. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list now for sure.
Good one.
We live in a consumer-centric society,
Yeah.
and it's really easy to lose sight of, even if we feel pretty clear about what our values are, generally, maybe in relationship to other people or, what we do with our time. It can be really easy to lose sight of that when there's money pressures or something else swoops in and takes our attention away from an overarching value that we hold.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind, sharing your thoughts on how to be more mindful about money, especially, in the heat of a moment when we're being triggered or being called.
Mhm.
I will just say for myself, I was at a family gathering a couple weekends ago. And fortunately, I didn't have the money, but I saw this coat that I really, really wanted. Do not need $1,000. It was really nice.
Right.
And my brain just was coming up with all kinds of justifications for, well, it's just as warm as my down coat. It's much more, blah, 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 and I just fortunately didn't have $1,000 sitting around to just spend, so it didn't happen. But if I had, I would have bought that coat for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think one thing, a lot of times when we talk about living in a consumerist society, sometimes the valence of that is, oh, that's so negative. And there's sometimes when we talk about that, it's like, well, I'm not consumerist. We are all consumerist. So there's this idea called this possession self-link, which basically says the things that I own define my identity. And it's not, sometimes that can sound very negative, but if you think about it, I am the kind of person who wears an orange shirt. I'm saying something to you about that right now. And we're all saying things to each other about who we are in terms of the things that we have and the things that we surround ourselves with. And when we get in a place where we don't feel good, our ego has been depleted, we're sad, we don't feel, our self-esteem is low, one very easy way for us to kind of reassert who we are is to buy something that makes us feel more like the person we think we should be. Now that's a temporary hit that can feel very good, but that cannot be great for the long term. So if you bought a $1,000 coat every month, Jill, that would not be good for your bank account, right? So a couple things that we can do to kind of help is, one is reminding ourselves of our values and regrounding ourselves and like, this is who I am, irrespective of the things that I own, irrespective of the things that I could buy. Like, I don't need to fortify who I am by buying things. Another thing is to ask yourself why. So sometimes I'll see something like your $1,000 coat and I'll be like, well, why do you want that? Well, that thing will make me feel more like the professional, successful person I aspire to be. And then it's like, well, what else can you scan for that tells you you are already that? And that's very nice. It's also helpful to remember your options for what you can do with that money. And then one thing that is really helpful, for me at least, is think about your future self. So I spend a lot of time thinking about future Betsy and whether or not I'm being nice to her. And spending that $1,000 on a coat that maybe I don't need, or what's the one thing that I've been thinking that I badly need? I badly need these $350 pair of shoes. They're really cute. They're brown. They're like mini croc embossed. But future Betsy, like, I don't even like wearing heels, you know? So future Betsy would just be like, you threw away that $350 on some shoes that are just going to get really dusty. So the more you can think about your future self, sometimes you can kind of help yourself align some of those money decisions that aren't so positive.
I love that. I liked how you said you scan for other areas where you're getting that validation, that affirmation of who you are in the world. If you're feeling whatever the emotion is that brings up the need. I mean, I imagine similar to the impulse to, you know, do other things as well, right? I mean, I think there's there's a vacuum of something that we're looking to feed maybe in that moment.
Yeah, and a lot of times if we're trying to fill it externally, particularly by buying something, it's helpful to like recenter yourself on, where is this internally? I mean, there's a reason why you want it. And a lot of times I think we are who we want to be. We just don't feel confident in it yet or something like that.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a life's work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of us are not operating in a financial vacuum. We have maybe partners or children or parents, or other people who have some sort of interest in how we are spending or saving or investing. And I wondered if you have, you know, again, from the sort of vantage point you have working with people, maybe coming in with their partners or their families, to have conversations about money that really tie to our personal values or shared value.
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing, as far as, you know, we aren't operating in a vacuum, we tend to spend and we tend to organize our money the way the people around us do. So to the extent that we are choosing who we hang out with in terms of that, that can be helpful for all of us in our financial lives. Obviously, you don't want to just pick your friends based on that, and you certainly can't pick your family. One thing that I think is really helpful is coming back to that idea that money is neutral and people assign stories and feelings to it, and asking yourself, here's what's going on for me, what's going on for them right now? And that can help you kind of speak more pointedly to motivations for things that they are doing or saying. And it can help you answer that more effectively without going through like the heated charge of money. So let's say let's say a parent has a grown-up child and wants to give that grown-up child money, has in the past, the grown-up child feels like it makes them feel like the parent doesn't think that they are handling their life as they should, you know? From the parent standpoint, they just want to be helpful. They just want to have that moment of connection. And I think what can be good is for the child to recognize that and either, you know, accept the money with grace and realize that it doesn't mean what the child is thinking it's going to mean, or figure out different ways for their parent to satisfy that need. So the other thing I will say about this is I have hard conversations about money all the time. And a couple of things that help are keep it factual. So one thing that we do is we just kind of lay it out and we're like, this is what's going on. And then keep it helpful. So this is what's going on, and here's what you want to achieve here. How can we get you there? You know? And I think that can even work with our family members too, or our friends is, look, you want to go to this concert, it's $300. I can't afford that right now, but you want to go because you want to spend time with me or something like that. So could we do this instead?
Yeah, looking underneath what the money means.
Yeah. And both what the money means to you and the money means to them, which can be so hard. I mean, I'm talking like, oh, just do this. It's so hard.
Well, because it's going to mean different things.
It's going to mean different things, and it's hard to understand that.
Yeah. And it speaks to maybe not competing, but conflicting value systems. Right.
Definitely.
So it opens a whole bag of worms. Well, I just have so many questions for you. I want to ask you one more question, and then let's move this to the group. Can you talk a little bit about the rise of what you call ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance investing, and investing generally? Because when you talked about investing being an inherently optimistic practice, I'm like, tell me more. Really? Because I'm feeling pretty cynical most of the time, but go for it. So can you share your perspective on that?
Yeah. So there is this kind of rise in financial products that allow you to invest according to your values. And they're usually called, as Jill said, environmental, social, and corporate governance investing. And basically what you're doing is a fund has a certain value that it says that we only invest in companies that have this, say they're good for the climate. You invest in that and you can feel good that your money is going towards companies that are helping the climate. That is good. From a math perspective, usually the answer, the investment strategy that gives you the highest probability of success over the long term is investing in the entire market. Invest in the whole thing. And that is partly because as something over here is going up, something else over here is going down. So you want to be able to catch all those upsides and those downsides. The reason why I think investing in the entire market is an inherently optimistic thing is you're basically betting that humanity as a whole will overcome whatever challenges we encounter in the future, and the market will continue to go up. And one thing that I see a lot is, yes, we have these ESG funds. We have these companies that are focused on certain social ills and correcting them. But we, as a collective species, are also putting a lot of pressure on companies to have better and better values. And maybe this is a little Pollyanna-ish, but even though like history kind of goes all over the place, I think not only does the stock market go up over time, I think we're doing a better job as a race over time. People's quality of lives are getting better. It's not a straight line, but we're kind of on a rise. And so I just kind of like to invest in the whole market because I feel like I'm investing in humanity and our ability to keep overcoming challenges and keep marching towards what is right and good.
Betsy, thank you.
Yeah.
I love that.